Everything he writes. He sounds like Kabbalah Center. You know how the books started to look all the same? He retitled it, changed the terms a little bit. But it's good for teaching. It gives you good, nice little patterns. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was asking me if I could order it.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you wait one more week, I'll give it to you.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll let her know.
You help me get away from a book. Too many already.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's start. Shalom. All right. So we were left last week about the 4 factors or elements that creates our spirit, right? That influence who we are. Remember, there is the word spirit in Hebrew is ruach, right? Or ruhot, if it's plural. And it means personality. It means your mood, your emotional side of you, right? That would be what we will call the limbic, right? The paleomammalian of you. We are always in evolution, the way our brain works. Also our spirits, or we call it our souls, and the spirit is part of the soul. And we get influenced by different things, and we become who we are. So what were the 4 factors? You remember the 4 factors when it came to the influence on us? What was the number 1 factor? Origin, which meant what? Past lives. That will be here. That will be more environmental. Yes, the whole thing of the soul is to rectify, right? Karmatic, yes, karmatic energies, right, from past what? Universes. So Kabbalah talks about multiverses. Just like now, physics, science, cosmology, right? Okay, so what's about them? What is it that origin can or not do? So we're influenced by our past lives. We're influenced by karmatic energies. So what does that mean? What can we do? Something we cannot do here. What? Cannot be changed. So this is because I'm going to read you a little bit about some, we'll see. Because there's a portion in Torah that talks about something like this. Okay? So origin. So what I want you to know is that whatever you feel, whoever you are, there's some things you cannot change. Right? So don't be praying at something you cannot change. It's just a product of your past lives.
Our nature.
It's part of our nature, but it's a spiritual nature. Right? It's like DNA, but from spirituality. Right? Okay, so what's the second factor? Or the second element? That's 4th. Biological, right? More nature. So that has to do with what? Genetics. Right? Genes. And that is what? Where was that coming from? Parents. Right? Can we change that?
No.
So out of the 4 factors, there's 2 already that we cannot do any changes. Right? So you have to kind of love what you have. It's kind of like poker hand, right? If you're playing poker, it's like, man, I got a bad hand, but I better not say anything because if I face something's wrong with me, they're gonna beat me up. So you have to accept what you get, right? That's why We're having a hard time today about that, right? That feeling and trying to be something we can't be. We're having a hard time as a society about that. Not anything moral, immoral, good or bad. It's just nature. Nature is nature. You can say you want to be something else. That's fine. But nature doesn't change. That's just basic biology. We can feel things and want to be some higher things. That is not the genetics change. Does that make sense? Okay. Number 3. What was the number 3 factor? External? So the external factor is what? No, the environment is number 4. Paths of development. Those are the environment. That's number 4. Has to do with your attitude. What? Has to do with what? Your lenses. Has to do what? Perception. And number 3 is the only one you can change. Perception is the only thing you can change, right? So you have a hard life. But if you change your perception, you see that your life is not as hard as other people, and yet your life becomes less hard. Even though nothing really has changed externally, you have changed the lens, and your attitude will change. Your attitude changes, you're in a better position here in anything in life. You just have to kind of know how to do that change. So number 1 and 2 can change. Number 3 is the one you can change. So people tell me, well, but that just means that, I want to see the sky is blue. So I want to change my perception because I want it to be purple. Is it purple because I perceive it purple? No, that's not what perception is in Kabbalah. That is more Plato. What I think it is. And that's not true all the time, because I can say, that it's red, but it's really blue. But because I say it's red. That's not what his perception here is going to be. So I'm gonna try to explain that one today, okay?
Can I say something? What about with trauma?
Trauma?
The way, okay, so they have the experience, and then life goes on, and so the perception of the trauma.
Would that be environment as an external?
No, it's perception too.
Perception? Oh.
Yeah, it is perception, psychological perception of it, of the trauma, how they see it. Yes.
Trauma, how they see it.
Yeah.
I was thinking more how it was afflicted.
Yeah, that should be more environmental, right? Yeah, but it's just how you see it.
Like, for me, like, when working with the foster youth,
Uh-huh.
like, the trauma of them, I feel like they were kind of stuck, like their mind.
Yes, that's
Because
perception.
the way they were seeing everything.
But it's not only perception. Remember, they have a past lives, they have a karmatic, they have genetics. Maybe their parents were more into their inclined to different vices. Each family has inclined to different vices. That's why you need to know your family. You just have to see how your family is, and that's you, genetically, like it or not. You're like, oh, I hate that cousin. Yeah, that's you. If it's your cousin, it's you. That's genetic pull. Now, we can do something about that. You're inclined to it, but this is where number 3, perception can make a big change. So I'm going to explain to that today, that part, because that becomes like, you're kind of like in jail. So, and again, every family has their good and bad traits. Would you say? Yes. Yes. But it's not only a thought. What I want to say is not like a good intention, like, yeah, I want to see the sky blue when it's gray. Yay, it's blue. No, it's not that. Because it's gray and it's raining. So it's not just like good positive thinking. That's what sometimes people see Kabbalah, like positive thinking, like the law of attraction. Have you heard of that? If I like it, I'm going to attract it. No, that's not true. It's just not. That's not what he's saying here. So I'm going to explain to you this, okay? So, and number 4 was environmental. So I'm going to talk about right now Jacob's sheep genetics in Torah. So I'm going to teach you that, okay? So anybody knows about Jacob's sheep? Have you heard the story? No. Well, here goes the story. The story is that when Jacob left the land and went to Haran, right? With his uncle Laban. Laban was a sorcerer. Do you know what a sorcerer is? What is it? Like a foreteller? No. A magi? No. A psychic? No. What does the word sorcerer means? The word says it. Exactly, one who uses the source. That's it. That one, it goes to origins. Right? Think about this. So if you go to the doctor, right? The doctor goes to the source? No, he goes to a descriptive explanation of things. So you will say, you go to the doctor, and he asks you what? What's wrong? I have a headache. Hold on. Take this. I have in the stomach. Here's the other one, because it's descriptive. The other part is called casual one. That means I want to go to the source. Do you know one of the biggest deaths in human history is malaria? Malaria has killed more than any other disease. Do you know that? And of course, they were trying to figure it out. What's wrong with it? They were talking about the fever and trying to bring the fever down, and people were dying. Until what? What was the source? Water. Mosquitoes. Yeah, water brings mosquitoes, right? But mosquitoes is so what they did. Somebody knows? They took each mosquito, opened their mouth, and put a little something on them. And it was done. That's it. No, what was it? They took different mosquitoes with the antidote to mate with those mosquitoes, and that's it. Malaria was gone. Great. Antibiotics. We got antibiotics, and everything finished. Right? This is what it is. So here again, right? Jacob goes to his uncle Laban, who is a sorcerer. He knows. This guy knows. He knows exactly where things come from. Very intelligent. So we call him, in Hebrew, we call him the white magic. That's what we call it. Right? Black magic. White magic. So anyway. So, he has to marry, you know the story, he has to marry the two sisters because Laban knows his source. He knows what he wants. He manipulates Jacob all the time. But Jacob learns. Jacob has something over him. It is the blessing of his father, Abraham. That's genetic. This is what genetics, the second factor of what we're talking about. He has it. He didn't earn it by being the grandson of Abraham. You go to the doctor goes, man, you have a great heart. You need to thank somebody in your genetics. Right? They bless you with it. All right. So anyway, so he goes there, right? And Laban knows this. So Laban says, you know what? I know I messed with you. I don't want to mess with you anymore. Let's work together. You work for me, I'll pay you. But Jacob says, oh, no. You're not having been good to me. So you know what? We're going to do this. I'm going to work to have some tangible worth. Because Laban was saying, when I die, all this is yours. He goes, oh, no. You have more sons, and I'm going to be a mess here. I'm going to be a mess. So I want something tangible. So do you know what he did? Have you read the Torah? No. Yeah, so he says to Laban, look, if I get spotted sheep, will be mine. And if they come out white, they'll be yours. And Laban goes, that is a great idea. Why?
Because they don't come out spotted.
They don't come as spotted. I mean, they come, but very, very few. Yeah. And so Laban says, this is a great business, right? So reading on genetics about sheep, there is 17 types of colors in lambs. And the colors of these lambs, right, is because of, we call it in genetics, alleles. And alleles are like part of the genes, right? They are dominant in that genetic passed down from sheep, right? Most sheep are white, so then more sheep are going to become white, even though there's some, black and other colors. Those are is going to be the dominant, right? So, for example, what is the most dominant color of eyes in the world? Browns. Do you know what's the percentage of that? 55%. That's a lot. What about blues? 8%. Yeah, it's 8. 8%. All right? So, again, the dominant will be brown. And so Laban knew the source, right? He knew the source. He says, oh, that's fine because I know how the genes go. It'll be more white. So why is that Jacob chose the other one, the spotted one that he knew is going to be less? Somebody knows? Exactly. He knew something that now we know that we didn't know before. What did he know? What do you think he knew? Has to do with this factor number 3. That's why I'm giving you this, because it's the factor. How? How did he manipulate the source? You're right. He used what? Perception. I'm going to read it to you now, because this is how you are going to change your life. Can change your life where you're coming from, your genetics, even your past lives or karmatic energies. You are not going to change it. The only way you're going to make that change against your own DNA is this way. So here we go. I'm going to read it, a little bit about the story, and then let's see if we can figure it out. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, here we go. So I want to give a brief introduction to epigenetics. Jacob was evidently a far more knowledgeable on Genesis than Laban, as he was aware of the concept that only comes to light in recent decades, called epigenetics. Epigenetics refers to various layers of heritability and genetic effects which are above or outside of the actual genetic code. So what they have found out there is we all have, most are brown eyes, and right, most of us. So let's say black eyes are the rarest of all the eyes, browns. But way in your genetic code, outside the genetic code, outside of it or above it, there is your blue eyes. Your blue eyes exist. Now we know that. It exists right there. It's just, it didn't trigger. Right? Does that make sense? So what they have, is the recessive one, which is about, in DNA, is about 98% of you is junk. Junk DNA, we call it. We call it junk because we don't know what it is for. But in there, it's probably the DNA to fly. Who knows? Or to breathe underwater. Who knows? Or be Spider-Man. I don't know. Whatever that is there. It's just called junk now because we don't know why it's not activating. But it's there, 98. So imagine when they did all the DNA and they coded every part of the DNA, they thought, oh my goodness, we are going to be ready to do a lot now. We're going to have to be ready to change people's height and everything because this is right there. But then they found out that out of all 100%, only 2% is active.
That's why it's 98.
It's active. So imagine with 2% what we have done. I wonder why is this 98% is that active. Jacob knew this. Jacob knew that every sheep that was white had the probability to be a spotted one. He just needed to activate it. Somebody knows how he did this? Going once. Bueller. Huh? He fed him. No, he didn't feed him, but almost. You get it there. Well, he's going to do a mutation, but the mutation he's going to do is going to be outside.
Environment.
He's going to use the environment. So he's going to use, third and fourth factor. First two factors he can use, right? Sheep are white. That's how it goes. He's going to use 3 and 4 to make that change. So, for example, the genetics spirituality of Jacob and Johanan, where they were really tempered. They were really violent, so much that Yahshua calls them the sons of thunder, because they were really that bad. But through something to them happened that John becomes the most lovable, kind of the disciples. And Jacob gives his life for the disciples. How is that possible? Can you change your DNA? Can you change? Well, no, but you can do something to it. You can change all these white sheep into spotted ones. That is what the story is about. You want to see how he did it?
Yes.
All right, let's see. I'm so happy about this. So, in 2008, scientists defined an epigenetic trait as a stable, heritable phenotype resulting from changes in the chromosome without alteration of the DNA sequence. Because if right now I would like to change something about me, I had to change the sequence, it would mess everything up. Right? So somehow I'm going to make the change without altering my DNA. So I'll continue being me, but something's going to happen to me. It's going to suppress something and to alter something.
Either suppress or activate.
Yeah. So for example, all of us have cancer cells in us. But depending on other cells or genes, suppresses those cells, and hopefully you will never have to have cancer in your life. Even though all of us have the cancer cells.
So, well, I was going to say, is that essentially like gene expression? So the idea that like we all have, those genes, right? But if they're not expressed, then we don't, they don't come to life.
Right, but they're not expressing because something is suppressing them, or they are expressing outside the genetic code because something is making them express. That's the idea of that study of epigenetics. Interesting, huh? Okay, so that's what this is about. So how he do it? Let's see. So then, let's see if we can figure it out now, and you peel it. But of course, if you peel it, you're going to leave spots on it. That's what he did. So then, he took the 3 branches, and when he saw that the sheep were going to mate, he put the branches close to them so they can see it. So when they were producing, it was spotted ones for looking at the spotted branches. This is the story, right? If people will laugh about it. Of course it works. It works now.
Wow.
Why? I'm just... And people say that the Torah is boring. I don't know where is it boring about. I really don't know understand why is it boring, but think about it. What do you think about that? What is it saying? So the same, so here goes. I'm going to see if I can give you an example, a different example. So for example, a person who has a gene that predisposes them to cancer, God forbid, could potentially have the gene to suppress, thus eliminating the increase of cancer risk. Though they don't work in this precise fashion, epigenetic cancer drugs are not available. So we have drugs to do that. I mean, outside now. This also applies to people who might be genetically disposed to obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's, or theoretically any trait at all. A person who has both brown and blue alleles does not necessarily have to have brown eyes, which is what we would expect based on principles of classical or Mendelian genetics, by numbers, right? It's more percentages, right? That's what we do. The brown eyes allele can be silenced, allowing the blue allele to be expressed fully. So there's a way to do it now. Right. Now we can do it. Now you can start ordering. Some wealthy people can order to alter the genetics so you kick up with blue eyes. This is what's happening. Well, Jacob says, yeah, it's pretty easy. It's not that difficult. So the same is true to Jacob's sheep. While the alleles for speckled and spotted sheep are recessive, the dominant white allele can be suppressed, resulting in more speckled and spotted sheep. In Torah, we read how Jacob took 3 branches and stripped away some of their bark to expose inner white layers so that the pattern resembled of the speckled and spotted sheep. He then placed these branches in front of the white sheep that were mating, and this resulted in white sheep producing more speckled and spotted offsprings. In this way, Jacob was quickly able to multiply the number of irregular-looking sheep in the flocks, increasing his own wealth and leaving Laban in utter surprise. What do you think about this? What is it saying? I'm going to read you now something called the epigenetics evolution, but I just wanted to see what you think about it. So, for example,
Why 3 branches?
well, I think it's very Kabbalistic about the 3 columns of the tree. So it talks about completed, as a completed type of number.
So Jacob introduced something to like the sheep's environment.
Yes.
And then that's what caused it.
That's causes.
I mean, that's kind of like the diathesis stress theory in psychology.
Uh-huh.
Maybe you're predisposed to like a certain mental illness within your family genetics.
Uh-huh.
But the environment, if you have a really bad environment, it'll express.
Express it.
If you don't, then it won't express.
Yes.
Like that's interesting.
Right?
He also, by doing that, he triggered the activity of spotted
Yeah.
sheep. So he knew the trigger.
So there is no excuse, right? I cannot use my karmatic or my past lives to say that my life is miserable. I really can use that if I can find a way to change my life, even though it doesn't change my makeup. I'm still a McDonald, right? In my case, body hard, don't work too much. That's where I come from that side. Right? They drinking, Italians, Irish, just going wild. But I'm the opposite. I work more than I have pleasure in the sense of just doing.
But you have pleasure by reading and literature.
Yeah, but I'm saying that part of my life is being suppressed. So I cannot say, because I'm McDonald, we're drinkers and irresponsible, I couldn't say that if I understand this idea, right? Okay, I'm going to explain to you another way. So let me read you this sample. Maybe this will help you more. Yeah, do it. Okay, all right. Okay. In northern Sweden lies a small isolated town called, I don't know how to explain this, it's called Overkatlix. I don't know, something like that. This town kept detail of historical records, including births, illnesses, and deaths, as well as harvests and food prices. Researchers started to poring over this data and noted a number of emerging patterns. So in this town, they were doing all this stuff together, right? And there were some measurements. Surprisingly, those who grew up in times of relative abundance tend to live shorter and sicker lives. I'm going to say it again. Right, so everything, when things were good in the town, right? The people who live in that time, the data says that surprisingly, those who grew up in times of relative abundance tend to live shorter and sicker lives, while those who grew up in times of relative famine were healthier and lived longer. Even more shocking. So that's shocking already, right? You get it? So when things were really rough, they were living longer. When things were in abundance, they were living shorter. It should be switched, right? But not here. Even more shocking was that these traits passed on their children and grandchildren. The grandsons of those who grew up in times of abundance lived roughly 6 years less than the grandsons who grew in times of famine. Should I continue? Yeah. The over-calyx study opened the door to much more research on the subject, and today we know that not only does food impact our epigenetics, but so does smoking, alcohol, and exercise, and just about every lifestyle choice we make. Moreover, recent studies found that not only do our actions impact our epigenetics, but even our thoughts do. 2013, scientists discovered that meditation affects epigenetic mechanisms and result in, among other things, less inflammation of the body, better stress response, and faster mental process. Epigenetics has brought about a revolution in biology and a new realization that we are not slaves to our own genome. We are very much in control of how our genes operate, and seemingly every choice we make affects our healthy and well-being, as well as our health and well-being of our children and grandchildren, since these epigenetic patterns are editable. This is one of the most enlightening and liberating scientific findings, putting each person in the driver's seat of their biological fate. It should also motivate us to make healthy lifestyle choices, because even if we might not care so much about our own health, the health of our offspring is directly impacted by our choices. And we try to separate all the time, right? And we can't. We are connected. We are connected who we are. So the story of I'm going to return now to Jacob's sheep again, okay? Does it make sense what I talked about? Kind of weird. What do you think is that? Well, we know now, and this is a new study, the immigrants are happier than people that always live in their own country. The people who immigrate are happier, healthier, and with more dreams than somebody who lives and never leaves the country, leaves their culture. And we know that Abraham was our first immigrant, totally first immigrant. And his descendants are the happiest people. So it's not only Torah in the sense of the text, but it's just the living, the genetics of our ancestors.
Could it be rather because like people that were born here, they take it for granted. We that come from other countries, like it wasn't easy to get here. We struggled there, we come here, and now like, oh my God, to us it's easy.
Yeah, and when you have so much, you start getting into vices, smoking, drinking. But if you don't have nothing to eat, the less you're thinking is about alcohol. You're thinking more about eating. So that just by eating and not taking the alcohol, you're going to live longer. So maybe not having too much is not a curse. Maybe having too much is really a curse. Right. You you choose better. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Jacob's, okay? And we finish with this. If meditation plays a role in how genes are expressed, we know that it's true. There is no reason why other mental processes cannot be the same. Because meditation is mental, right? I'm relaxing and I'm just connecting, and it's changing genetically and suppressing genes that are going to harm me and going to express the ones who I want them to help me mentally. That means that everything else I could do it mentally also. Is that what Jacob did? Right? Is it Jacob using the same concept? So he goes, by visually exposing his sheep to speckled and spotted images, Jacob may very well have triggered the epigenetic change resulting in suppression of the Y alleles. So when the sheep looked at it mentally, they changed the genetic to spotted ones. So what you see, what you hear is a big deal. If you have somebody who's always negative, is always going the opposite way, is going to affect you. And not only affect you, but now all the ones who descend from you. You don't want that. Maybe that's why we have to choose, right? A lot of times it's, you want to love everybody and respect everybody, but you don't want to have a close relationship with somebody who's always dragging you down. Right? Neurologists have long known that there is essentially no difference. Listen to this. Neurologists have long known that there is essentially no difference in the brain patterns when a person is literally seeing something versus when they are simply visualizing the same thing. So if I close my eyes and I look at a car, and I open my eyes and look at a car, in my brain is the same thing. So the question is, where is the car? Inside of me. I recognize it inside of me, not outside. Outside, I just recognizing what I already have inside. So if you only have garbage inside, what do you think you're going to see outside? It's garbage. And this is why life sometimes looks so terrible to us. It sometimes seems so nice to us. It fluctuates because it's how internally we're doing this, right? So, if mental visualization like meditation can affect the epigenome, then why not actual visual displays? So, if it mentally can be happening, then by the sheep looking at it, that was physically almost the same, it's going to change the genetics. Armed with knowledge, Jacob overrided his father-in-law and become excessively wealthy men. Of course, one cannot ignore God's role in the process. At the end of the day, God is all this energy. Jacob himself explains to his wives. This is what Jacob explains at the end. I'm going to finish with that and you guys can go, okay? So this is Genesis 31, 7 and 9. But I have finished the 4 elements of your spirit, right? 2 solid ones can change, and 2 they can suppress or elevate the things that I cannot change. Does that make sense now? Okay, he goes then the verse. He goes. This is Jacob speaking to his wives about what happened. He says, your father mocked me and changed my wages 10 times. Terrible. Laban was terrible. 10 is, he was using the Sephiroths to suppress Jacob. Keep it stuck, right? But God, and this is where always the light is what is important. Yeah, all this stuff is science and it's great and it's good to process it, but without the light, nothing is going to happen. But the light did not permit him to harm me. If he would say, speckled ones shall be your wages, all animals would bear speckled ones. And he will say, ringed ones shall be your wages, all animals will bear ringed ones. Thus God separated your father's livestock and gave it to me. Right? Because what is God to us? The knowledge of it. The awareness, that's what God is for us. The more I know, the more wealthy I'll become. And I'll tell you what this very important neurologist said. Without knowing what your brain does, it's impossible to be happy. Without knowing the patterns of the universe, it's impossible to navigate this life. This life is rough. This is an ocean that can get crazy on you in a second. And you better know how to maneuver it or know the winds so that you always have escape, all this mess that we get into. So what do you think about this one, this class? You like it? Yeah? Good. Okay. Thank you so much. You can leave now in free. Go and visualize.